I've known you for a lot of years, and I know that at your core, like anybody who played the game at any level, you have a deep love of basketball. And I don't know what your ties, if any, to Jamaica are, but I know you could appreciate the idea of an island nation putting together a team that could qualify for the Olympics and what it would mean to the kids, to the guys who play. It would be a great thing if this could all happen.
Yeah, it really would be. Sports in general has always been just one of those character building activities that young people ought to get involved with and really take away a lot of life building, life enhancing traits from it. I mean, that's what I did. I got involved with team sports. I learned to be a teammate and a team player, a leader on some teams, a valuable teammate on others. That's what sports really teaches you. Also, along with the ups and downs of life. You don't win every game in sports. You learn from your losses, get back to the drawing board, and put together a different and better game plan. And you don't sit there and rest on your laurels just because you won a game or two. It's back to the drawing board again. It's day after day after day. Life is very much the same way.
You played for several NBA teams. You played here in Seattle. You played with the Clippers, the Jazz, the Knicks. I'll just keep naming teams until we run out of them. But you also, and I want to ask you about, you played in Italy for a couple of different teams. You played in Greece and you played in Spain. I had zero exposure to international basketball until 1994 when I covered the World Cup in Toronto. The U.S. team was there. Gary Payton and Sean Kemp were on that team. So we went to Toronto to cover that. I guess people had told me this, but until I saw it, the international basketball fans, there is a passion to the way they support their teams. It's similar in some ways to soccer when you see the international, and you could speak to it more than me and any guy I ever talked to. I talked to so many guys who ended up playing some in Europe, and they said NBA crowds are great, but there's something different about those European crowds and the international crowds.
That's very true. A lot of the European cities, especially the larger ones, some of the smaller ones, they really carve out this territory amongst the cities. And maybe on the east side, you support one side, one team. On the west side, you support another team. If you're lucky enough to have 3 or 4 teams, the city is divided that way. And you become fierce, but most of the time, friendly rivals. I remember when I played in Greece, and during the time I was in Greece, back in the 90s, Greece had some of the best European basketball around. Panathinaikos, Olympiakos, Ares. I mean, teams that were just right up there, better than most college basketball teams. Not quite as good as pros because they only had 2 foreigners per team and a couple former NBA players to fill up those 2 spots. You're playing with a bunch of Greek guys. Same in Spain, and Madrid and Barcelona with their great teams they've always had. And in Italy, I mean, I played. Mike D'Antoni was playing. I was playing. CJ Kupek. A lot of great players who came and played in the NBA, coached in the NBA, but got their start. Walter Berry was in Italy when I was there. So names you've heard, guys you know of. A lot of us had some great European experience as well.
I remember I asked our mutual friend Eddie Johnson once, I said, what's it like playing in Europe? And he says, well, one night I was getting ready to shoot a free throw and somebody threw a doorknob at me. What they says a doorknob, like they had taken the doorknob off their house, brought it to the game, and threw it at Eddie while he was shooting a free throw.
That's right. I remember one time playing in Italy, and we had a very fierce game competition going. We were the home team. We'd lost the game at the last few seconds by a very bad call by the officials. Our fans were so irate, about 1,000 of them corralled around the arena and would not let those officials out of the arena. And they were until about 1 or 2 in the morning. These poor officials could not get out of it because of a wrong call. That's the penalty for sports overseas. I'm hoping Jamaica can have that kind of same fervor for basketball as well.
James, you've been through a lot over the last couple of years, some health challenges. It's so good to see you looking good because I know you like any of us, as you move through life, there's things that come. It's like, wait a minute, how can this be happening to me? I'm not that old yet. And you've also been very outspoken in a positive way about mental health. And, this is something we talked about this briefly yesterday. I want you to talk about some of the things you've done in it, but it's a stigma that I shouldn't say a stigma. It's something that's changed. We don't have a stigma about that as much anymore. We used to whisper about mental health. Oh yeah, he's got some problems. Now it's better. It's out in the open. There's still a lot of people struggling with it, and there still is some fear, I think, to come forward. But you've done some great work in trying to knock down walls and say, look, it's okay to ask for help.
That's exactly right. But the stigma still remains pretty deep and strongly in communities of color, African, Asian communities, Hispanic, and Native American communities. Culturally, these are things that we just don't talk about. You are almost emasculated if you have a mental challenge. The families don't speak about it. You don't seek any help. You resort a lot of times to drugs and alcohol and other, total disastrous behaviors. And this is the thing I'm really trying to destigmatize, not only for communities of color, but men in general. Athletes are very competitive. Doctors and physicians are very competitive and excel at the top of their class. And when you get to the top of the heap, it's lonely up there. People look at you in adoration and think that, wow, you got it going on. You can't possibly have any problems. But we are just people just like anybody else. And especially, we don't want to ask for help. It comes from the way we're growing up as little boys. Little boys don't cry. You fall down and scrape your knee, get up and brush your knee off and get back to playing. Be tough. Don't show that you're injured. Don't show that you got hurt. That stuff gets ingrained in you at 6, 7, 8 years old, and it stays with you throughout a lifetime. And so, men, I'm really pleading with you to please look at yourself. If you don't feel like you're on top of your game, reach out for help. I did that. I went through a tough time over the last 5 years with 4 major surgeries, 2 of them heart surgeries, in the last 5 years. And I found myself just a shell of my physical self that I used to be. Up until that point, I was running 3 or 4 days a week. I was in the weight room, 6, 7 days a week. Strongest guy in there. And we're still running very well at 55, 56 years of age. And all of a sudden at 57 years of age, boom, my heart gave out. And I just in the nick of time with an emergency open heart procedure saved my life. But the coming years after that, the next 2 or 3 years, financial challenges, health challenges, business challenges, personal life challenges, foreclosure on my home, bankruptcy, losing all of my life savings from the NBA. That stuff put me in a downward spiral that was very, very tough to get out of. It took me 12 months. But I did it by reaching out to my doctors because I knew something wasn't quite right with me. I couldn't sleep through the night anymore. And I went and talked to my doctor. He was just going to give me a simple sleeping pill and tell me, take 2 and call him the next day or whatever. Yeah. He was luckily very, very inquisitive, asked a lot of questions. And he determined right there at the office visit, hey, James, anxiety, you've got depression, and you're suffering from suicidal ideations. I mean, you've got it already planned out how you're going to end your life. And he put me on prescription medication for about 6 months. And, and on my own, I reached out to a small, intimate group of friends, Lenny Wilkins and George Raveling being 2 of them, who had known me the last 40 years. They knew me when I was just a struggling high school, college kid and a startup NBA player. They knew me way back then. And they reminded me constantly, James, you have worked way too hard to just throw it all away. And we're going to be for you. And both of them were there for me throughout 12 months of total darkness. And I finally made my way through thanks to those 2 guys and several other friends. But the key is, Gas, I realized something was wrong and I reached out for help. Guys, men, boys, young boys, all of us, we got to reach out for help. There's no shame. And it's okay not to feel okay.
I thought, a few weeks ago, actually, it's been a couple of months ago now, when Dak Prescott, the quarterback of the Cowboys, where he said, "Hey, I had a tough off season. The COVID thing, my brother killed himself. I'm battling depression." And it's interesting. There were some people that got on him. Oh, it's what you're saying. Oh, well, don't admit that. But I thought the majority of people like, no, it's okay, man. We haven't all gone through the pain of losing a relative like he did, but we're all living in this weird world right now that can kind of screw you down. Not everybody has Lenny Wilkens and George Raveling, but everybody has a Lenny Wilkens and a George Raveling in their life who they can reach out to and get them through sometimes.
That's exactly right. That's exactly what we have to do. And so I just applaud anybody who can make it through that kind of thing without resorting to disastrous behaviors that will just make your life that much more difficult. And so, that's my life now. This is my new chapter of life. The next 20, 30 years, I want to devote all my time to being a voice and an advocate for mental health awareness and suicide prevention, especially for our young people and especially for our men.
And you've got a book coming out, right? And you told me you're getting close to finishing another book?
Right, yes. I've been writing a book on my experiences. Back in 2018 is when I went through my 12 months of hell. And
yeah.
So it was tough. So I put together my experiences and the techniques and strategies I used. And the end of every chapter, there's a lot of practical questions that a reader can ask themselves and can apply some of the thoughts that they're going through to see if it's time to reach out for help for themselves or for somebody they love and somebody they know. I'll be starting up a podcast soon where I'd love to get you on a guest as well, speaking in particular to men of some of the difficult times they went through in their life and how they made it through.
Right. Well, I do it in a minute for you, and I'm through. I remember saying to somebody when you were having like your second heart thing, and it's like everybody's scared when they hear that. And I'm like, I don't know, man. Donaldson's heart's as big as a Winnebago. I think they'll find a way to fix it. I don't know how they're going to do it, but they'll find his heart because it's gigantic, and then they'll get whatever they need, the parts to get it back together. And it's amazing, isn't it? The appreciation you get for the people in the medical business, the scientists, the doctors, the nurses. When you're down and you can't help yourself, what they do for you it's incalculable.
Yeah, I've got testimonials in the book from my doctors, my heart surgeon in particular, Dr. Samuel Youssef, and his testimony is something along the lines of, I had James's heart literally in my hands doing the and I could tell then he had a heart of gold as he worked his way through all of this, and he's been giving back ever since. Walking hospital ward with other patients that had a very similar surgery from Dr. Youssef, encouraging them in their hospital bed, hey, you can make it through. I made it through. And so this is what it's all about, to keep on paying it forward, but also making sure we're looking out for everybody all around us.
James, when you played, I'm trying to think, when you were with the Knicks, I think you might have been teammates with Patrick Ewing, and I know you went against Patrick Ewing many times in your career. When people think Jamaica basketball, his name comes to mind as being from there, and we got to see him for about a year here in Seattle at the end of his career. What are your experiences like with Patrick, both as a teammate and then those nights where you had to, okay, he's my problem tonight?
I played with the Knicks in 1992. Coach Pat Riley was the coach. We had all the great Knicks players back then, Oakley and Ewing and Mason and Starks, all of them. So we had great players. Patrick Ewing was always one of the hardest working players I've ever been around. I mean, he led by example. He would bark at you. He would shout at you, but he was doing just as much work, if not more, than you, because that's what he expected from himself and his teammates. I loved him as a teammate. He was a fantastic teammate. I didn't always love playing against him because he was a handful, know. But outside game, running the floor, blocking shots, defense, scoring, he did it all. It's just too bad he came that short. That little finger roll short of an NBA World Championship. He came so close.
Yeah.
But a lot of us come close. But Patrick still is a champion in life every single step of the way.
You rattled off a bunch of great names there from that Knicks team. Who was the toughest guy on the Knicks? You might take 20 minutes to answer that. I mean, there were a lot of tough dudes on that team.
There really were. Xavier McDaniel was there, too. but I'm thinking the toughest guy was probably Charles Oakley.
Yeah.
The Oak was just beast. I mean, he's big, he's strong, he's as big as me. He's not quite as tall, but just as much weight, just as strong, and he could hold his own with anybody. So that tandem of Ewing and Oakley just really gave us a firm footprint of a New York Knicks team that was powerful for years while Patrick Riley was there, especially.
During your career, you went against a lot of the great names.
Yeah.
And I'll put you on the spot a little bit, maybe below that level, like maybe names we've either forgotten or we don't think about. Who are the sneaky tough guys you went against? I mean, when you name somebody like Elijah Wan, we all know he was tough. What about that next level down of guys that maybe fans might have forgotten?
I think of guys like Brad Doherty, very skilled big man, played with Cleveland Cavaliers. Lenny Wilkins coached him for all those years. Brad was one of those kind of guys. Mark Eden, just a monster in the middle, blocking shots. Everybody's shots were getting blocked by Mark Eden. But these are guys you don't think of very much. Artis Gilmore. Oh, Artis. We had battles, the two big, strong lefties like we were. But these are the second tier guys that, if not for great players right ahead of them, and at the same time, Abdul-Jabbar, Akeem Allah, all these other great players, these guys would be household names as well.
Yeah, and just the great scene in the movie Airplane where Kareem breaks the wall and admits that he's Kareem and tells the little kid, "You tell your dad to drag Walton and Lanier up and down the floor for 45 minutes." That was the best description ever of what it's like to try and be a center in the NBA, to just drag one of those big guys up and down the floor because they're all over you all the time.
That's right. They just have no idea, no clue how competitive it is. And I look at today's NBA game, it's totally different. I don't think I can play today. I mean, I have to swallow my little ego and say, hey, I don't think I can play in today's game. But back in the 80s and the 90s, the 70s, where every team had a 7-footer. Every night you were going against a big guy playing inside, battling. Those were the glory days of the NBA, I think. And I remember the NBA came out with a list one time, the 50 greatest all-time players. And in my career, I played 14 years NBA. My career, I played against 37 of the all-time 50 great players. 37.
Wow.
That's right. And between 1980 and 1996, where I played my.
That's good. 37 in the top 50. You missed 13 is all. That's not bad. That's James. What's the best way for people to keep up with you?
Go to my foundation website. It's yourgiftoflife.org.
Yourgiftoflife.org.
A lot of great information up there. I share my story, interviews and things I do. I put up there. I really want to be a conduit for being able to be there for people and then be able to steer them into the appropriate directions they need. If they need behavioral health counseling, they need medical professionals. We've got a board made up of medical professionals, mental health professionals. And so those folks help me to direct people to where they need to go for help. And of course, I'm always there to respond. I got my email up there. They can always contact me and I get right back to them. I just want to be encouragement because I made it through, and you can, and they can, and everybody can make it through. Nobody should ever end this precious life that they have. And that's why my foundation is called Your Gift of Life, because life truly is a gift. And we shouldn't throw it away. We shouldn't shortchange ourselves by any means.
You are resilience personified. I'm so glad you could do this. I love you. It's great to see you, and I'm glad you're doing well, and continued best wishes, my friend.
Thank you so much, guys. Great to see you guys. Love everybody. Okay, be well, be strong.